All right. Oh my goodness, so many people are coming in. This is awesome. I'm just continuing to let people in. So, we're going to start this conversation here with Maria and Sam. So happy to have our speakers here tonight. Um, Definitely listen as we go. Think of any questions you may have as we go or comments. If you'd like to write them in the chat, I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. And after Maria and Sam speak a little bit, we're going to open it up to discussion and any comments or questions you have. So, first, I just want our panelists to introduce themselves. Sam, I'll start with you. I would love to know your connection to the albinism community, how long you've been involved, and then your connection to athletics as in sports as well.
Uh, Hi, I'm Sam McClung. I'm in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. I have three sons. My oldest, his name is Brack. He does have albinism. Um, and that's how I got involved with everything. My first conference was Pittsburgh, for those of you that have been around a little bit. And a lot of that is because Pittsburgh was just north of us. It was an easy trip. But we never had a call or anything. Our first introduction with Noah was at a conference. It was a lot. It was some trial by fire, but it was an amazing time. From confusion to family in about 3 seconds. So it's a wonderful thing to be a part of. But so that's how I'm connected. I do have three boys. Brack, my oldest, like I said, he's 12. Um, he's been in sports and played everything that he's tried about everything that's available around here. And my other two boys, 9 and 5. So we don't have very many free weekends. My 9 to 5 is not 9 to 5. I'm a pastor, so the joke is I only work one day a week. But if you've ever been around one of us, it's not true. But no, we so I it gives me a lot of time to be coach. So I am a coach at the at the high school here. I'm one of the football coaches. I've been involved with coaching as far as with Brack and different levels, since before having kids. Before, that I played collegiate football at Tusculum University. My athletics kind of goes deep. The my Well, I used to brag about my brother who has one of the fastest pitches in MLB history. I can't brag on him anymore because I have my nephew, who is Mac McClung, who did not compete in the slam dunk contest this year for the NBA, but the three previous years he did win it. So athletics is a big part of what we do. And that was a big concern for us. Some families sing, some families, play musical instruments, some families, our family has always been active in sports, whether that's hunting and fishing, whether that is, with the ball, anything across the gamut. So it was a real scary time for me, when we realized that we have a child with low vision and how all that is going to work. So really did a deep dive into trying to figure that out. And thankfully, when we dove in, everybody, for the most part, was really, really, really receptive. So that's kind of the nutshell version. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm excited to dive into that more too when I come back to you about how your son has adapted and what that's been like. I love what you said about you come from a sports family because I was just telling Maria and Sam right before this call. I have albinism, but I never have played a sport in my life. I was a theater girl, so this is not my expertise, which is why I'm glad you guys are here to take this on. So we have Maria here and Maria Lepore-Stevens. So Maria, I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Maria Lepore-Stevens. I am an adapted physical educator. Currently, I'm a professor at Rowan University in South Jersey. And I'm also an orientation and mobility instructor. I run summer camps for kids who are blind and visually impaired called Camp Abilities in South Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Arizona. And I've also gotten to work at NOAA Camp for the past three camps. I'm repping my tie-dye camp hoodie tonight.
Yeah.
Um, My introduction to the albinism community. So I grew up with a mom who was also an adapted PE teacher. And if you've heard of the Camp Abilities programs, they're sports camps for kids who are blind and visually impaired around the whole country. And my was one of the founders of the first camp program in Brockport, New York. And what's a mom to do when she has a 6-year-old daughter and it's summertime, but bring me to camp with her. So the first time I met someone out with albinism was when I was 6 years old. And um, albinism was just introduced to me as some of your friends have lighter skin and can't see as well as your other friends. And you have to learn how to include them in your sports. So albinism was just introduced to me as part of life as a kid. And, I met other kids with albinism as I grew older. Um, and our camp abilities in Pennsylvania seems to particularly cater towards kids with albinism just because of our connection with NOAA. And so almost all of the kids at Camp Abilities Pennsylvania have albinism. Um, I think that's my intro.
Oh, that's perfect. Perfect. So we have a lot of parents here tonight, and I don't know where everyone is on their journey and how old all of your kids are. But Sam, I'm gonna go back to you. Um, I know it's kind of a broad question to ask,
What did you say?
how do you, I'm sorry, do
No.
I hear, am I like echoing? I don't know. I hear something happening. Um, sorry. So Sam, I know it's kind of a broad question to ask. How do you recommend making sports more accessible for kids with low vision? That is my question. Just any advice you want to give to these parents listening, things they can do, things they can look out for, things to make them feel hopeful for their child entering the sports world, the athletic world. Any of that, take it away. And like I said, we will open this to questions, but I'd love just to start it off like that.
Well, with our situation, coming from a sports world, and we don't quit kind of thing. So a lot of times we start out with an open conversation with the kids, with Brock. I said, you know, um, like, hey, if you want to do this, you can try it. We never said, well, you can't do this because, hey, my friends are signing up for baseball. Do you want to play? And with that, with baseball in particular, baseball was a totally different gamut, a different sport, different everything. So but with that sport and any of these, we would say, hey, this is what you do. You want to try? And so what we'll do is we'll talk to the coach, we'll talk to the organization, the league, or whoever it is, and say, this is the situation. If you're wanting to play, we want to try it for a little bit, and say, we have a week. You have a week, 2 or 3 practices to say, hey, you're either going to be on the team or you're going to be helping the team in some form or fashion. Of course, it all depends on the age. When they're little and it's a soccer swarm of where the kids are just all in one big mesh running together around the field. Low vision doesn't matter. The only funny thing was with that is with soccer, we made sure that we brought our own ball, a high contrast white and black ball, because sometimes at one time in particular, the ball was green on green grass. And I went over to the other coach and said, hey, can we use this ball instead of that one? My son can't see it. And, I think I could have punched him in the face and made less of a, he felt awful that he's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, 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 it's okay. It's okay. So I think the biggest advice is one, when the kids are old enough, ask, be honest with them. Like, hey, this might be harder for you because of your challenge. Doesn't mean that you can't do it, but it's going, you're going to be a little bit behind potentially because of this challenge. And it depending upon the child, some kids take that as, oh no. And but if you have expectations like, hey, you're going to do well. I don't know what well looks like for you, but you're going to do well because you're going to try hard. And we're going to put in the effort. From the athletic world, I can't coach effort. You know, so if talking to these kids like, hey, if you show up every time, day in, day out, every practice, and you give it your 100%, that's putting forth the effort. And every coach that's worth their salt wants to see the effort, especially in youth sports. That's where there's situations where there's teams that starting out you don't need to be a part of. You don't need to be a part of that travel team the first year because no kid playing the first year needs to be part of that travel team because they're not ready for it. But for us, Brack has tried everything. There's been a few things. The baseball, the little league was funny. Talked to the coach, and for some reason, the age group that he was playing was the only one that didn't have that high visibility yellow ball. So the coach bought some balls, bought some high visibility yellow dye, and dyed the balls, which is hilarious because his wife called me and said, "Thank you. I finally get new rugs," because he let the dye boil over and she got new rugs in the kitchen. But, it's just kind of one of those things. If you're upfront and honest and say, "Hey, this is a kid trying to do it," if you don't coach youth sports, especially young age, because you want the wins and losses. And if you do, trust me, you don't want your kids on that team anyway because it's about the rec league basketball that we're on. A success is a kid that wants to play again next year. And this is coming from a coach who we took our football team to the playoffs for the first time in about 10 years, and so we want to win. We coach and teach winning, but it's all about what is the win. For that age group, the win is the kid's having a blast. That's a win at that age group. They want to try this sport again. So the advice is don't tell a kid no. Tell them, hey, this might be hard, but let's check it out. Let's what can we do to make it work? With baseball, it was make the ball yellow and talk to the coach. I remember with football, I had to get on to one of the coaches. He was telling Brack, all right, it's on this. And I had to go and say, hey, he can't see how many fingers you're holding up. Thankfully he's my kid, so he's a lineman, so he sees the person in front of him. He doesn't know, on defense, he doesn't know who has the ball or not. So I tell the referee, hey, he can't see if he has the ball, so he's going to tackle the first guy beyond the line of scrimmage. And the referee's like, okay, because that's how it is, as long as it's nothing vulgar or mean. We did have a couple little things that you just, as the advocate, say, hey, this probably isn't a good spot for him. Kickoff return was not a good place to put the low vision kid. So there's things that you did, but for the most part, as long as you're talking to the coach at the beginning and you maintain that open dialogue, if the coach is the kind of coach that wants to be there, yeah, I think it'll work out, just because of communication. So.
That was awesome. A lot of really, really good nuggets of wisdom there. And I love that you have that parent experience too, and have seen, and I'm sure you're very proud of him for all the sports he's been doing and everything. So Maria, same to you for all the parents here or educators here, anyone here listening. What would you tell them for how to help their kids have the best experience possible doing sports with low vision?
So I think from the physical education standpoint, that one of the most important things is finding a physical activity that you can enjoy for your lifetime, because that really is, and if you look at our national standards for health and physical education, that is the goal of PE, is for people to find two or more physical activities that they can enjoy for their lifetime. So like ultimately, I think that that's the goal. And what those activities look like are going to be different based on the person. Everyone, I think, can participate in every sport. It's just at what level. Like Sam was saying, that like there's going to be some times that vision might limit someone from participating at a high level. That doesn't mean that someone can't play pickup soccer on the weekends with their friends. It doesn't mean someone can't play rec league basketball on a team. It might mean that they're not going to make varsity at their school, but there's always a way to participate in physical activity and to participate in that sport. There's a variety of different community leagues. So I think de-emphasizing high level competition as always the outcome is important. And if high level competition is what your young person is interested in, finding a sport or physical activity that is either has built-in accommodations in the rules, things like swimming, wrestling, track and field in the national rules for USA wrestling, USA swimming, USA track and field. There are built-in accommodations for athletes with visual impairments that have to be followed. Or finding sports where people can participate in a solo way as part of a team. Again, things like track and field are excellent for that. Someone can make states as a blind athlete and participate in Paralympic training programs while also being part of their school's team. Um, or other things that have community rec options like goalball, beep baseball, tandem biking groups. So I think that everyone can participate in every single sport. Finding the way that is safe and successful and provides physical activity and enjoyment might be different for different people based on their vision and based on their skill. Um, and if high level competition is what your athlete is looking for, making sure that they find sports that align with their visual needs and or have that built-in accommodations in the rules can be important.
That's that's so great. And I'm glad you mentioned the Paralympics because the Paralympics are about to start and there are a lot of athletes with albinism that have and still do participate in the Paralympics, and not that that's everyone's goal, and some people just want to do team sports or other things, but I think that's an important thing to talk about too. I know there's at least one person with albinism in the Paralympics this time for the winter 2026. So that's very exciting. So Sam and Maria, are you okay with opening it up to comments or questions for the last half of this call?
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Okay, awesome. So if anyone has any comments, questions, conversation starters about athletics for people with albinism, you can write it in the chat or you can just unmute yourself and ask. We'll give you a minute.
I'm just going to take my microphone off, Casey, and ask the question.
Oh, go ahead.
Sam, you brought a very good point about having that open dialogue, and you were talking about open dialogue with like coaches and with your child, but also maybe with the other parents in the on the team, that type of thing as well. I was wondering if maybe either one of you had like an experience to share, or Maria, is there maybe some way that we can help parents feel more comfortable going to coaches like Sam or yourself to kind of open that dialogue up?
Yeah, Sam, do you want to go first or do you want me to?
You go ahead.
Okay. So I think being aware of what your child's skills are, and what their needs are first. Like knowing if your kid has the capability of being in high level sport at this particular time, or if they might need more practice before getting there. Because I mean, that's obviously important for the team as
Yeah.
well. But then also knowing what your kid needs yourself and that your kid knows what they need themselves. So, like in Sam's story about the bright soccer ball, if you're going into the situation and you and your kid haven't tried things out yet, then you might not know what to advocate for. So, trying out a lot of equipment. Unfortunately, if you get services from a TVI or an O&M, most of the equipment that's available to you through quota funds is from American Printing House for the Blind, and they're terrible. There's almost nothing good that APH has to offer in terms of sports. Um, I'm getting ready. I was just editing it to make sure that I had the most up-to-date information. I'm going to put a bunch of resources in the chat. I have a list of commercially available auditory and brightly colored products that might be helpful for PE class or for um, like pickup games, rec play, playground, stuff like that. Um, I have a document that talks about some options and when advocating in PE class and for after school sports for your kids. Because if you are playing sports at school, whatever your kid has in their IEP or 504 plan for accommodations for PE class can also be provided for after school sports. And then I have some resources, other resources for sport and physical activity. So while Sam talks, I'll put them in the chat.
Awesome.
I did have one thing to add, like with the for the PE stuff, and this is part of the conversation. So at the PE teacher last year, um, I was mentioning to him what goal ball is. Goal ball is a great sport. So if you don't know what it is, I'm going to butcher the description, but if you're sports minded, it'll make sense. It's kind of like you take soccer, but it's a row and it's a wide goal. The ball has a bell in it. Everybody's on all fours trying to catch the ball. There's a team of about four or five, but it's team A versus team B. Well, so I was describing it in better detail to the PE coach, and he said, "I have a ball with a bell in it. That must be what it's for." Because he got that ball with a kit of stuff and just didn't really realize what it was. He said, it's basically a soccer ball with a bell in it, with a little bit different size. And he had no clue what it was for. He says, "Oh, we'll play that." And so part of it is just communicating and that kind of thing. Making sure that you're talking to the coaches to set up that expectation of, as Maria was saying, you kind of got to know your kid. Okay. We all remember American Idol where the kid comes on, can't sing a bit, and the parents say, "Oh, my baby can sing."
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Some of our kids aren't the greatest athlete ever known, and that's okay. It really is. From a coach standpoint, that's okay too. But if you have a parent coming in going, why isn't my baby playing? There's a there's a sign in our coach's office. The coach's door is always open to any and every conversation except about playing time.
Mm.
That's part of that. But it's a little bit different situation when you're talking to a coach about a special situation. And the key thing to me is to start with the coach by saying, "Hi, my name is," and shake their hand and say, "This is the situation. How can I help you help my child?" Because they wouldn't be there, especially in young youth sports. They wouldn't be there if they didn't want to help these kids. So that way you're starting out by saying, "How can we as a team help this kid be the best that they can be?" Find out whether this is a good fit, whether, what is, are they going to be the team, halfway into the season, we figure out this isn't a good fit. Do they become the team manager? Because as Maria was saying, there's a way to be a part of every team. Every kid can be an athlete in their own way. It's just making sure that we get them where they want to be so they can have fun, so that they can play. The world's already looking at kids with challenges with vision and things like that, and looking at them differently to begin with. Let's not let sports be another area that looks different. Let's just say, yeah, we're still playing, but we're playing differently. My old Brack is going skiing this weekend. He's gone skiing a couple times with programs for low vision kids in the state. There's all these programs that you can get into. Depending upon where you are, to be a part of that. And I remember I'm nervous because I'm not going with him this weekend when he's going. He's going with one of his uncles, and I'm trying to explain like, hey, we've got to. But the best part about not telling a kid they can't do something is when they do something that's hard and they're proud of it. That's what it's about. When the kids, Brack is excited about going skiing, and I'm like, "How many times did you fall?" He said, "Oh, I fall every time, but it's great, and it's the most fun I've." So those are the things you're celebrating. Brack had his first wrestling season this year, and it was a frustration because he didn't win them all. But of course he's a big kid but a sixth grader. So a lot of these kids were eighth graders. So it was a challenge. It was different. Wrestling's really a good sport for low vision because there's some things that you can do. If someone is complete lack of vision, as Maria was talking about, there's things built into the rules to where you have to maintain contact if you're wrestling someone without vision so that they know where you are. Really cool things that they can do where, you know, someone has come before us. That's another beautiful thing. Someone has come before us, so we get to step in line with them. So,
Awesome. Thank you so much. Everybody, Maria shared a lot of those resources in the chat. And also, Libby, Maria answered your question in the chat. The other two sports are wrestling, track, and field. We did get another question in the chat. It's a little bit longer, but I'm going to read it. And Maria or Sam or both of you can answer. So Eric says, I'm here as a TVI from a very rural region in southwestern Ontario. TVI is teacher for the visually impaired. I have a student in third grade who loves playing sports, but is finding that it's hard to get meaningful coaching because most community coaches have no experience with vision loss. So we are shifting our ECC focus to using some school time to help him develop basic skills and technique in basketball, football, and soccer. Do you have tips, drills, or techniques that I could use to effectively support him in this?
That is difficult, and I am not sure exactly how Canadian schools work. Um, but I know that in the US, um, one of my first recommendations would be to check on if you can get a consult with an adapted physical education teacher in the student's district. I'm not sure if that's available to you in Canada, but an adapted physical education teacher would be able to write appropriate accommodations and hopefully get um, adapted PE services onto the student's IEP to help them catch up on these skills if they're lacking in them. The other resources uh, link that I have on that list of links that I gave you. Under that, there's a couple of different teaching videos. So the camp that I run, Camp Abilities, in Delaware and in Pennsylvania and in Arizona, we went virtual during COVID. So we made voiceover teaching videos that teach a lot of those basic skills that might be helpful for you to use. Like we broke down how to dribble a basketball, how to shoot a basketball, how to pass a basketball with voiceover and visuals in the videos. Those might be helpful to you. And then there's a bunch of other like coaching videos that are linked from that website also that you can send to coaches because they're aimed at coaches to help coaches include kids with visual impairments on their team. Eric, I'm also going to try to reply to your comment with a link. There is a sports program for kids with visual impairments in Ontario. It looks like they're focusing on hockey and water sports in the coming season. But it is for kids ages 8 to 18, so that might be a resource for you as well. Even if um, even if your student's not going to go to that program, they might be able to give you more Canada specific adapted sport recommendations that I just don't have.
Great. Thank you. Sam, anything to add to that?
you know, in kind of the football world, football was one of the things that was mentioned. That's kind of my cup. That's my area.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, football is hard because it's you can't just wing it with football. Especially depending upon position availability. With a lineman. Actually, lineman to me is the best place to be if you're low vision, because low vision, as one of my docs early on to try to give us some peace because he knows the family, knows who we are, and said, Sam, he's your kid and your wife's kid. He's going to be big. He's probably going to be playing on the line anyway. He can see the person in front of him. And so, so that was kind of the comfort thing. But a big part of that with football and really kind of any of that sports in general, the first thing to teach is to just get in those athletic positions to get to where you're starting at. And those are things that most coaches, even if they do have a low skill set, can kind of look at, the difference between a basketball triple threat position and a football athletic stance is basically hand placement. And so for those kind of situations, watching some YouTube videos where he can slow it down. The videos that Maria posted are going to be great tools for you to use to kind of reach into it. I hate to say YouTube is a place to go to learn things, but as a coach, I pick up drills from YouTube to teach our kids. Back to we're not the first people doing this, so using someone else's experience to piggyback off of is what we should be doing. So, but yeah, it is a challenge in a rural community because, like I said, I'm in southern West Virginia, very like you, very rural. So it has its challenges. But it's worth it if you have those open conversations, especially with some of those coaches who aren't qualified. One, don't tell them they're not qualified. It's start out with, hey, how can we help? And so that open dialogue from the beginning, I think, really helps.
Amazing. I actually have a question, but I'm gonna open it back up if anyone wants to pop in. All right, we do have someone in the chat. One of the issues we've had is communicating the impacts of nystagmus as it causes extra medical attention for minor bumps. Our daughter had oh, sorry, the comment went away. Our daughter had ski patrol rescue once because her eyes were jittery and later had EMTs called during a swimming meet. So you mean because people see her eyes and assume something like an injury happened? Is that what I'm understanding? Yeah, like extra medical attention. But yeah, she says yes. That's interesting.
I, as a staff member, have had a similar thing happen for one of my campers. It was at a camp not for kids with visual impairments. It was a camp for kids with asthma, and we just happened to have a kid with a visual impairment. And I had explained albinism to my staff ahead of time. And all of a sudden, in the middle of a meal, someone comes running up to me and was like, "This kid is having a seizure." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? What do you mean?" And he was like, "It's because of his albinism, like you taught us." And I'm like, "I don't think that that's the case." And it was just his eyes. It was the nystagmus, and they thought the kid was having a seizure. Um, I feel like that's really tricky. Um, I don't know if it makes sense to have like a medical alert type bracelet that describes that information. Because they have they have sport ones. My dad had a heart attack and I put one on him and it's permanently on his body now and he can't take it off. But it's like, you know, those like wristbands. I'm showing my plastic ones. They have plastic ones with like a little metal piece that attaches to it and then you just fit it right to your size. And so it it doesn't get in the way. It's silicone with a little metal piece. You might be able to put some information on like that. But I think really communicating with your child's coaches and instructors to make sure they have that information and potentially even having your kid be involved in advocacy to their teammates so that teammates can also help. So that if an adult that your child doesn't know starts to get nervous about the nystagmus, their teammates can help them advocate in those situations also.
Yeah, not only that, it's for nystagmus to be present in a concussion, it has to be a pretty good one. It's not a common thing for concussion protocol. It is something. The problem is it's the easy thing to look for. My part of my background that I didn't mention is I was an athletic trainer, physical therapist assistant. So coaching little kid stuff. I'm the one who checked concussions for everybody. So it is part of the protocol to check for nystagmus, but it is not, if a kid has a nystagmus with a concussion, it's probably a pretty good one. But yeah, uh, it is difficult, but like Maria said, just make sure we're communicating. That way they can advocate for themselves, and as she said, just let the teammates advocate as well.
Yes, Sam,
And
you
in
kind of,
terms of like,
oh,
if
go
you're
ahead.
worried about baselines for concussion testing, the baseline testing is really hard on kids that have a visual impairment because it's very visual. But if your kid is an athlete especially in a sport where concussions are more common, bringing your child to a specialist who can do baseline concussion testing on someone with nystagmus. So then they have that baseline information. So if you suspect a concussion, you can bring them back to the same specialist who can then do the concussion protocol. Because yes, it could be hard to test for a concussion, especially because most baseline testing is very visual. Um, I saw another chat come in, but I also wanted to say I put a couple of more resources. If you didn't see it, I put a couple more resources in response to Eric as well that could apply to anybody.
Awesome. And yeah, the other chat that came in, you both kind of just touched on this. It was just someone said, great question. The flip side of that question, any extra precautions we should take for concussion awareness with nystagmus? But I think you both kind of cover that unless you want to add any more about, seeing the similar provider and everything.
Well,
That
this
is
is
a really good
kind of
question.
basic concussion thing. The best thing you can do to prevent a concussion is have a well-fitted mouthpiece. And I know that seems silly, but that's all for all athletes. The best thing you can do it. If you're in a, if my kids wear the extra pad on the helmet for football, which they have them for if they're playing soccer or rugby or different things like that. They have versions of those for those sports as well. But yeah, wearing the equipment correctly, a properly fitted mouthpiece. Just saw today they actually have a mouthpiece that's if the sport it has a chance of concussion, but they have a mouthpiece that fits on the lower part of the mouth, not the upper, where you can talk more, where you can, it doesn't bother communication nearly as much. And it shows to be as effective as a properly fitted upper mouthpiece, which the only way that you can have those and still be able to communicate is have that done at the dentist, which I had to do in college but no, so there are if you're worried about concussions, as crazy as it sounds, a mouthpiece is the best way to prevent it.
Awesome.
If your child also happens to have HPS, there is a whole other bleeding disorder guide for safe sport from the National Hemophilia Foundation that I just put in the chat also, that has a lot of good recommendations for finding safe alternatives to sport. So if that is something else that your child lives with, that guide might be helpful as well.
Yay, thank you. Maria's just popping all the all the links into the chat. I love it. So everyone check the
He's awesome.
chat for all those things. And I can also, Maria, if you want to send me these, I'll email them out to everyone too, if you're able to
Sure.
send them to me. Um, I'll go ahead and ask the question I had. We have time for a few more if people want to just continue writing them in the chat. But I wanted to bring up photophobia, light sensitivity. I mean, like I said, I didn't grow up playing sports. Of course, I know wear your sunscreen, wear your sunglasses, wear a hat maybe if you're able. But do you have any specific advice for when it's really bright outside for kids playing sports that I'm not thinking of, besides just glasses, sunglasses, and a hat, um, or what you can do? I don't know if there's certain sports where you can't wear sunglasses or a hat. I don't know enough about sports, to be honest.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I actually have a bunch because of some research that I've done and also some parent questions that came up at NoahCon 2 years ago.
all
So
right.
there are some sport leagues that have rules against hard brimmed hats. And in that is the case, your child will need to wear a soft brimmed hat. And you need to get it approved ahead of time. So if your child is going to be playing soccer or especially any like contact sports, make sure that you talk with your league ASAP, find out what kind of hat is allowed, what kind of hat is not allowed, and you get your hat approved. You will probably not get that hard brim hat approved ever because it's a safety for all kids, but you will be able to get a soft brim hat approved, like a floppy little safari hat, bucket hat. So figuring out what hat is going to not impair your child's vision from its flop, but also can be approved by the league. Um, Orientation mobility instructors should be able to do an assessment for sun lenses that are the right color for your child. If you do not currently have an O&M instructor, I recommend asking for an O&M evaluation because even if travel skills are not necessarily something that your child struggles with, getting those resources like specialized sunglasses can be helpful. Or you can also go to your low vision doctor. The O&M instructor is just going to do usually a better assessment because they will bring your child outside, not just do it in a clinical setting to see what they can see. Sunglasses are not as simple as like just polarization or not polarization, or there's like a variety of different colors and darknesses that can be helpful to your child. Um, Ensuring that hats and sunglasses and sunscreen are in your kid's IEP or 504 plan, especially if they're going to have after school sports that they need those for. Because if that hat is in the 504 plan, then the soccer team has to approve some hat for your child. There's also goggles that are tinted. There have prescription goggles and tinted goggles that might be helpful if your kid is swimming in an outdoor pool. And the full body swimsuits are fantastic. I know there was I don't remember, was it shade suits? Maybe that was at the NoahCon. Um, I've seen a variety of other ones. The shade suits ones are really good. I get those for all my little nieces and nephews when they're babies. So those strategies can help. But I definitely recommend getting specialized sunglasses that are based on what a vision professional recommends for your child's eyes. They also have the rec spec ones that have a strap so that they don't fall off.
Amazing.
Personally, with us with those, the rec specs work really well. With football, and when it was a rec league, a rule was you couldn't have any visor. All we had to do was the same documentation that I had from the doctor to put window tint in the car is the same documentation that I take and just told the doc, I was like, hey, also include visor for for sports. So the doc's like, oh, sure, no problem. And so that same piece of paper, because in West Virginia, there's not a special certificate. It's just a doctor's note. So if I ever get pulled over, my window tint is too dark, I have to pull out my doctor's note for my son. But that same documentation for that works for the rec league. And they again, it's one of those things like, hey, you have to help me with this. This is I'm not trying to do anything tricky here. Just help me help the kid. And again, everybody's like, sometimes there's a little bit of pushback, and you just have to be your kid's advocate and say, this isn't because of X, Y, and Z. This is because of this diagnosis. This is what the doctor says is what's going to help. Not just cause, but because of the documentation of the diagnosis.
Yeah, definitely. That's really, really great information. I have a few people in the chat saying they don't have questions. They're just loving this information. Um, so we have a few people just saying thank you and thank you for the resources. Um, all right. I mean, we have time for, maybe one or two more if anyone has any other questions. Other people are saying super helpful. A few people, Maria, are saying they loved your presentation at the conference.
Thanks, guys.
And we have one parent in here who says their son is only 2, but they're just here listening for the future. And that's possibly possibly a lot of you have kids who are a little too young right now for sports, but you're just listening for future info. So that's exciting. Um, yeah, so if nobody else has any questions, I think this was great. Really, really informative. I want to thank Maria and Sam so much. Maria Lepore-Stevens, Sam McClung. You'll be seeing them around Noah Land if you continue to stay involved. And someone asked, could we share your resources to other parents if needed?
Yes, please do.
Yes.
The website that I linked in there, the Capabilities Delaware website, I just like compile all of my resources on there. So most of them are on that website. Also, if your kids are like first to 12th grade and want to come to camp this summer, um, I run a Capabilities in South Jersey, one in Delaware, one in Pennsylvania, and one in Tucson, Arizona. There are plenty more. Those are just the ones that I run. So I'd love to see your
Amazing.
kids there.
And for any of you here, I'm going to send an email with this recording. This has been recorded. I'm going to send an email with the recording of this and with the resources that were shared. So be on the lookout for that coming from me. Should be within the week. But yeah, thank you so much to our speakers. Loved having you. I even learned a lot, which is awesome. I'm still learning all the time about my own condition. And thank you all for coming and listening. And we hope you join us on more calls in the future. And don't forget to fill out your survey and tell us if you had a good time or not, or if you have any feedback. We'd love to hear it. So thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.